Welcome to this short video on how to answer the 4-mark questions in C2. So the key thing is, it's easy to pick up 4 marks. The reason for this is you only need to use a few words normally for C2 to really explain and show your understanding. So it's all about keywords, keywords, keywords. So let's have a look at the first question then. So what we can see is magnesium oxide contains magnesium ions and oxide ions. Notice they've made a real effort to say Mg2 plus and O2 minus. Maybe need to think why they put that in there. Describe as fully as you can what happens when magnesium atoms react with oxygen atoms to produce magnesium oxide. So let's break that question down a little bit further. So breaking this question down a little bit further. So magnesium oxide contains magnesium ions. So straight away we're talking about ions. And it mentions Mg2 plus. And oxide ions, O2 minus. Really key point here. Describe. So all we're doing with describe is just say what happens. As it says, say as fully as you can what happens. So what happens to magnesium when it reacts with oxygen to make magnesium oxide? Now they've mentioned magnesium ions and oxide ions. And remember, magnesium oxide is an ionic compound. So that should give you a clue as to what you need to talk about. Now it's worth 4 marks. So let's try and break the question down into where you might possibly pick up the marks. How did magnesium oxide and oxygen become ions? They've talked about the ions here, so they want you to talk about how they become ions, because we know that atoms, when they form an ionic compound, become ions. What happens to the electrons? We know electrons are really important with ions, so where did the electrons go from and to? And why do atoms react in the first place? If they were stable, they wouldn't react. So there must be something that makes them more stable for them to react. And the key thing is to think about electron shells. Pause the video, have a go at answering those questions, and let's have a look to see. So here's the possible answer slide. So pause the video and have your own go. So hopefully you've had a go at answering the questions now. How do magnesium and oxygen become ions? Well, we know that to become a positive ion, so magnesium 2 plus, to become this, it needs to lose 2 electrons. Oxygen, to become a negative ion, it gains 2 electrons. 2 marks, straight away. In fact, you could almost argue, if you saw the mark scheme, that because we've mentioned 2 electrons here, it's worth the 3 marks. So what happens to electrons? Where do they go? So the electrons don't just disappear from magnesium, and oxygen just doesn't gain them out of thin air. We have a transfer of electrons. So in other words, we have 2 electrons from magnesium go to chlorine. Oh, not chlorine. Wrong question. Go to oxygen. That is definitely going to get you 3 marks. Statement like that or a statement like that. And then the final mark is, why do they react? Why do they form magnesium oxide? And thinking about electron shells, it's all about forming a full outer electron shell, sometimes referred to as noble gas arrangement. In other words, magnesium is going to have that full outer shell because it's lost the 2 that were in its outer shell, and oxygen is going to have a full outer shell because it's gained 2 electrons to go from 6 to 8 electrons. And that is all you need to do. That's going to get you a 4th mark. Now, for chemistry at C2, you're talking about 45 marks out of 60 to get an A. If you're picking up 3 marks out of 4 on those questions, that's 75%. That's getting you the A. So really simple ways to answer these questions. Keep it simple, use the key terms, and I hope that helps.